O heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of Truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things, treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and dwell within us, cleanse us of all stain, and save our souls, O gracious one. Hey, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. RNT is almost snowed over or snowed under. I say that jokingly. We got just a little bit of snow today, but as you can imagine, when it snows in Louisiana, pretty much everything shuts down. So, however, since where I do my show is literally 20 feet from my house, I just walk from over there to over here, and here we are. So, sneaking this one in today, and I want to talk about Pope Francis and his comments about Fiducia Supplicans and the dissent that has been made by a lot of people who have struggled with it. So he offers some interesting comments about it. And so I wanted to review that. And by the way, I am familiar with some of the comments that he recently made about hell. I'll be doing that in a later stream, a separate stream from this one. Okay, so before we do that, let me remind you, hit that subscribe button. Help me grow Reason and Theology so I can reach more people with the content that you've been enjoying here. So go ahead and do that now, and hit the like button while you're at it. Okay, I want to share my screen, and we're going to take a look at some of the comments that Pope Francis made. So let's begin with this article by Catholic News Agency. Pope Francis responds to resistance to Fiducia Supplicans. The Lord blesses everyone. I found it really helpful, so let's take a look at it. It says Pope Francis responded publicly to questions about the Vatican's declaration on blessings for same-sex couples for the first time in a television interview on Sunday night. In an appearance on Italian talk show on January 14th, the 87-year-old Pope was asked if he felt alone after the publication of Fiducia Supplicans was met with some resistance. Sometimes decisions are not accepted, Pope Francis replied. But in most cases, when you don't accept a decision, it's because you don't understand. Spot on. In the vast majority of the cases, people just didn't read it or didn't understand it. There were very few that I encountered who actually read it and had a good grasp on what Fiducia Supplicans actually said, and yet still had remaining objections. Very, very few. The Pope underlined that the Lord blesses everyone, and that a blessing is an invitation to enter into a conversation, to see what the road is that the Lord proposes to them. The Lord blesses everyone who is capable of being baptized. That is, every person, Francis repeated. But we are to take them by the hand and help them go down that road, not condemn them from the beginning, he added. And this is the pastoral work of the church. This is very important work for confessors. I think that people who haven't really done ministry before, it's easy for them to sit back and judge and critique and criticize Pope Francis. But I think if you have some experience in ministry, you could totally appreciate what he is saying here. You don't start out by condemning a person. You help them understand their need for Christ. You help them understand that they are in sin and therefore their need for Jesus and to turn away from it. And that is a process. And it certainly doesn't happen by fire and brimstone condemnations at the outset. The Vatican Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith's December 18th declaration made it permissible for priests to offer non-liturgical blessings for couples in irregular situations, including same-sex couples, noting that It offers a specific and innovative contribution to the pastoral meaning of blessings, permitting a broadening and enrichment of the classical understanding of blessings. Following widespread backlash from bishop conferences in Africa, I want to say a lot of that is overblown, as I've shown to you, because we've looked at a lot of the statements of the bishops' conferences in Africa, and a lot of them were on board with Fiducia Supplicans, so a lot of that is overstated here. And also Eastern Europe, also overblown, because I imagine they have in reference the Ukrainian major archbishop in his comments, where he did not say that he rejects Fiducia Supplicans. He just says that it doesn't apply, and he offered some reasons. His comments do differ with some other bishops in the Byzantine tradition who uh, definitely took a different perspective and do think that it applies. So, more to come there, but also this situation was overblown. And it says, in strong denouncements from some of the church's senior prelates, I think here of Cardinal Sarah or Cardinal Mueller, the Vatican's Doctrine Office issued a 5-page press release on January 4th to provide clarification on the document. And, just to reiterate, not that the document needed clarification as much as clarification was needed from all of the confusion that the critics caused because they didn't read the document either at all or at the very least with a spirit of docility and the hermeneutic of continuity. Rather, they often read it with a hermeneutic of rupture. And when you read something like that, you can come up with criticisms about anything. Try reading the Bible with the hermeneutic of rupture. Let's see how well that goes. Writing that its application will depend on local contexts and the discernment of each diocesan bishop with his diocese. So there are considerations that have to be made on the local level. And the bishop is going to have to determine that for his own territory. It's one thing to just outright reject it and say, hey, this is heresy or something like that. That's one thing. It's another to say, well, there's nothing wrong with this. Theoretically, it's not heretical. It's all theologically orthodox, but it doesn't practically work in my diocese because of this or that reason. For example, with some of the African bishops, they're saying this doesn't work out in our society because in a lot of cases, it is illegal to be a homosexual. So blessings for persons of the same sex is going to be something that is obviously going to be in conflict with the law, especially if exposing that a person is attracted to persons of the same sex might get them in legal trouble. So there are those practical considerations, and the Vatican has said, yeah, that's understandable. So Fernandez and even Pope Francis himself has not had an issue with um, African bishops saying, hey, look, this doesn't apply in our society for these practical reasons. There's nothing wrong with that. And the successor of St. Peter has confirmed them in that point. So now it continues. Speaking to the Italian program C'è Tempo C'è Fa via video link from his Vatican City residence, the Pope said that when someone disagrees with a decision, they should express their concerns in a fraternal discussion. Absolutely. Canon 212, Donum Veritatis, it allows for these discussions and even some cases criticisms. It, however, does not allow, and in fact, it forbids public dissent. There's a difference between questions, discussions, even constructive criticism versus condemnations, accusations, public dissent. We seem to have those things confused. And he's right to note the proper distinctions here. Watch this. The danger is when I don't like something and I set it in my heart, I become a resistance and come to ugly conclusions, Pope Francis said. This has happened with the last decision about blessing everyone. Absolutely. He's saying, look, it's fine to have fraternal discussions. It's fine to have questions, even criticisms. It's another thing to just outright oppose and resist. Dissent is not the same as criticism. We have to get that straight. But I'll say, in the vast majority of the cases, the criticisms that I've seen were baseless and they were misplaced because a person did not either read the document or did not read it with the spirit of docility and the hermeneutic of continuity. He continues, Pope Francis also responded to questions about the Declaration on same-sex blessings during a closed-door meeting with 800 priests from the Diocese of Rome in the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran on Saturday morning. According to the Vatican-owned media outlet Vatican News, the Pope said that the Church's doctrine on the sacrament of marriage between a man and a woman has not changed. And now look at the money quote. Pay attention to this part. And that people are blessed, not sin. There you go. From the mouth of the successor of St. Peter, there you go. People are blessed, not sin. A whole lot of apologies to the successor of St. Peter are owed. Where are all the content creators and all of the clergy who have accused Pope Francis of teaching in Fiducia Supplicans that sin is blessed, not just persons? Something they cannot legitimately derive from Fiducia Supplicans. Nonetheless, they've still made the false accusation. And yet, here it is. People are blessed, not sin. Will people use at least half the energy setting the record straight that they've used slandering and bashing the Pope? Well, given their track record, likely they will not. They will remain silent. Other Italian media outlets, including the Italian news channel Sky TG24, reported that Pope Francis told the priest that an LGBT organization cannot be blessed. But people can always be blessed. And that the declaration will not be implemented in Africa because the culture does not accept it. Again, some of those laws. Now, notice this part here. An LGBT organization cannot be blessed. Why is that? Well, because as Pope Francis says, homosexuality is a sin. That's a quote from Pope Francis. So you can't bless sin. And therefore, he says you can't bless an LGBT organization. Please consider that if you're one of those people who thinks that Pope Francis is on board with the LGBTQ agenda. How do you square that with what he says here? Does this induce cognitive dissonance in you? Or are you going to just ignore what he says? If you are at this moment experiencing cognitive dissonance, I sincerely ask you, retrace your steps. Reconsider the premises that you've bought into. Take a step back and ask, have I misjudged Pope Francis on this issue? It continues, Cardinal Angelo de Donatis, the vicar of Rome, told the Italian television channel Rai News 24, responding to requests from an African cardinal, the pontiff clarified the situation. The intention of the declaration is to bless people. Now, that's what I've been noting from the beginning, because that is a very clear concept that derives from the document itself. Persons are blessed, not their union. Persons. People. And here, the successor of St. Peter confirms that. Let me add one other thing that I think a lot of people missed from Vatican News. Take a look at this from Pope Francis. In that meeting with the 800 priests in the Diocese of Rome, Pope Francis stated, that many do not read well the texts of the church. Good listening is required, he emphasized, noting that conflicts must be managed but not hidden. I love it. He just called it for what it is. You know what? We're struggling with reading magisterial documents. Many do not read the texts of the church very well. And Fiducia Supplicans brought that out more vividly than anything before. He's spot on. This is something I've been emphasizing over and over and over. This was a reading comprehension issue in some cases. I mean, in other cases, people didn't read the text. In cases where people did, again, it might be a reading comprehension issue. Or it could certainly be reading it with the hermeneutic of suspicion. That's also another problem with reading texts well. You have to read it with the spirit of continuity and harmony, not rupture. If we read it with the spirit of discontinuity and rupture, then we're the same as the people who reject Vatican II because they read Vatican II with that same spirit of rupture. As Pope Benedict told us, we need to read it with that spirit of continuity. Same for Fiducia Supplicans and all other magisterial documents. I love that he just called it for what it is, though. People just don't read the text of the church very well. That's pretty blunt. And but you know what? It needed to be said by the successor of St. Peter. I appreciate that. I agree with what Fernandez said when Fernandez basically said, look, at this point, the problem is basically this. You either didn't read the document or you don't have goodwill. I think he's pretty spot on there at that point. You're either not trying to understand the church in a harmonious way, you're trying to rather interpret it with this hermeneutic of suspicion, which indicates bad will, or you just didn't read it at all. Well, I hope you found this helpful. If so, hit that like button and the subscribe button so you can help me reach more people with this content, with specifically this video. If you want more people to see it and hear what Pope Francis has said on the matter, help me reach those people by hitting that subscribe button. Now, in just a little bit, I'm going to do a video on Pope Francis's comments on hell. So stay tuned for those if you want to see that. All right, we'll see you later.
Are you a Catholic thinking about converting to Eastern Orthodoxy? Or are you a Protestant discerning whether or not to become Catholic or Eastern Orthodox? If so, I have the book just for you. It's called Answering Orthodoxy and engages all of the arguments that Eastern Orthodox use against the Catholic Church. I respond to all of them. I show that they are in error, and in fact, they're inconsistent, because the things that Orthodox are objecting to are in fact found in their own tradition. So the fullness of the faith can only be found in the Catholic Church. Check out the book right now at shop.catholic.com for your copy today.